Everybody ready?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Is everybody in? Sorry.
Yeah.
Old doors are okay.
Yes.
All right, so there you go. That's my title. It's Stick to the Script, Orthographies, Fonts, and Philosophy. The title is such because I have the tendency to go off on tangents, which I'll try to avoid. In fact, this is going to be the speedy version of this talk to try to get us back on track. Oh, and that's me. I'm David Peterson. That's my website, thanks to GoDaddy.com. All right. Anyway, so one of the things that I kind of pulled together with this conference as we started soliciting talks was I modeled it into a mini orthography conference, just because that's just my favorite thing in the world. So there are going to be a lot of presentations this weekend on specific orthographies or orthography in general, and you can think of this as kind of an introduction. So anyway, all right, so most of us create languages for fun, right? And few things are more fun than creating languages. As my good friend David Duran knows, you got to talk to him about his stuff. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what writing systems exist naturally, how to go about creating them, how to create some fonts a little bit, and other much more exciting things. So some definitions before we start. This is kind of necessary so we know what we're all talking about. An orthography is a language's writing system. That's how it does it. It's the whole thing, the whole package, including numbers and punctuation and everything. A script is a specific script that's used for a language. So for example, in English, we use the Roman script as our orthography. So does Spanish, and so does a whole bunch of other languages. But that's simply the script. And the romanization system is a system used to write some language in the Roman alphabet that otherwise does not use it as its script. Important to note here is that orthography does not equal romanization. Those are two different terms. All right, so anyway, oh yeah, more definitions just in case, you know, I know looking around I know lots of people know this, but a phoneme is a kind of sonic unit. So it makes a sound and it has those slashes. That one there is ch. It's in German, or it's when you're disgusted in English. Yeah. All right. A phonetic symbol is the actual sound, so sometimes, you know, phonemes switch places for no good reason at all, and they have those brackets when it's actually the sound. So that's ch. The other one could have been a g, or who knows what else. You know, phonemes do strange things. And then a grapheme, usually we use these little angle brackets for it, unless it's pretty obvious that it comes from another language. We use that to represent that actual letter. So the thing like that, that's a grapheme. All right, so let's see. Oh yeah, schedule. Here we go. Schedule. Ta-da! That's where we are at right now. All right, perfect. So basically, you have these writing systems, right? In English, we learn our ABCs. In Chinese, there's a special secondary alphabet that really only children use, that they actually write next to the big fancy characters to tell Chinese children how it is to pronounce them. But of course, you know, adults don't use that. That's really just for kids. So a question that, of course, all English speakers have is, why doesn't everybody just use the Roman alphabet? And of course, the answer to that is that, you know, nobody's as advanced as we are. That's of course the natural answer. No, of course, that's silly. Anyway, yeah, there are a bunch of different writing systems for all the different languages we have, and this is a basic, quick rundown of them. Alphabetic systems, basically, you assign a glyph to each of the sounds, however they determine them. Consonants, vowels, they're all the same. English is one of these, Spanish is one of these, you know, we got A and T and so forth. Abjads, now we get to stuff that's interesting. In abjads, consonants are the prominent characters, and vowels have a somewhat limited role. So for example, we have some Arabic here. This is both the same word. It means, what does it say? What did I say? Tatakalam? So you say that's masculine. You say if you're a dude. So these both say the same things. I'm going to try to speak into the mic here. Okay, these both say the same things, but this is pretty much how everybody writes it. This is how you read it in the newspaper. Technically, it could be written like this, and all these little things are these little vowels here, but they're just so unimportant, nobody cares about them. The consonants are where the action is at. So that's pretty much how you do it. And this is kind of like a secondary ancillary overlay that can be used.
Except the long vowel.
What?
The long vowel.
Listen, I'll get to that when I get to that. All right. Okay, so what's next? Oh, alphabet syllabaries. I'm borrowing a lot of Trent Pearson's terminology here, and we'll find out more about him in a minute. So alpha syllabaries are, you have these consonants with basic forms, and then vowel characters are added to them. And so Hindi is a perfect example. You have this letter that you think of as G, and its basic form is actually a syllable. So in Hindi it's ga. And you have to add this special character beneath it to delete that vowel. So if you just want a G sound, you put that little slashy there below it. And then you can add these other special characters to get other vowels. So that's a long vowel, E, and this one's a short vowel, W. And, but the idea here is that you have this prominently displayed consonant and then very regular vowels that get kind of added to it. It's really like a fancy kind of alphabet, honestly, with just, you know, really bizarre way of kind of doing it. And there are tons like that, and they're all good fun, and there are special characters for vowel initial. All right, so let's see, what next? Oh yeah, true syllabaries, here we go, like Japanese. There's a separate symbol for every single syllable in the alphabet. Japanese is the common one. This is the only character I can ever remember in Japanese. And it's voice one, ga, because it's very simple. All right, what's next? Oh yeah, logographic systems. These guys are fun. So these just go across the board. A graph, even a logographic system, can stand for a word, a concept, a sound, a syllable, just a phonetic string of some kind, half of a word, sometimes just a semantic concept that doesn't have any phonological equivalent. So we have these examples, these wonderful examples from Chinese that I have no idea how they're pronounced or what they mean, but they mean, oh no, they mean that. I don't know how they're pronounced or how they're formed. This looks like a little dude standing, you know, I don't know, in a building, so that's kind of like village. And if you know the, if you know the chemical symbol for gold is AU, well, I just want you to take a look at this. Here's the A, this is a plus, and this is kind of a stylized U. I think that's how they did it. All right, so let's see. All right, and then there are these complex systems. So a combination of all the previously listed elements, and one of the prime examples is, you know, English. So for example, we have this. All right, if you don't know this is like, laugh out loud, you are too much. Why did you eat 7 hot dogs? Learn to eat, noob. That's short for newbie. And then we have this little gentleman that's punching this gentleman to indicate that he's upset at him or making fun of him. So notice what we have here. All right, we have the traditional writing system, so we have eat there. We have a number character used as the word for that number. We have acronyms that are standing in for something else. We have letters that are used in place of words. And we have punctuation, of course. We have this bizarre thing that I'll talk about in a minute where we have this phenomenon going on. That's really interesting. And then you have just these textual forms like this. These are zeros, and they're just used as stylized O's. Just because they look similar. And then you have these other characters that are used to draw out little things. It is an incredibly complex system, and just about every natural language system in the world, if analyzed holistically, this is a Trent Peterson quote, is probably a complex system. But, you know, basically, this is the phonetics, and then the other terms, that's the phonology, if you want an analogy there. All right, so non-natural systems. You don't have to stop there, of course. After all, we have conlengths. So this is just a simple example I came up with here. Let's say that this is your writing system. Everybody knows these characters here. Stop that feedback. So that plus that equals P, that plus that equals C, blah, 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 and all that stuff. And so then you have this question here, what do these things equal? And they don't equal anything, in fact. They don't stand for features, they don't stand for anything. It's just that they're common elements combined to produce certain phonemes. And so you can do stuff like that, and this is just kind of like, if you think about this as a symbolic system, here's an actual system. This is Trent Pearson's system. He has one language he drawn in, and he has about 57 scripts for it. This is one of them. This is called the Putt-Putt script. And he was nice enough to send me this, but the little things on the bottom aren't red. Okay, so here we have, this is the same glyph right here. Same glyph, right? I mean, it looks pretty fancy, but it's basically the same glyph. And you're adding these elements at the bottom. And it changes the spelling from mas to ka to tha to go. And there's just no relationship phonologically or phonetically between any of those forms. It's completely arbitrary. Here's one symbol modified by these other symbols, produces a random thing. And this is the type of thing that you can do with a truly complex or polyfunctional system. And thanks to Trent for that example. All right, where are we at? Okay, so what is the purpose of orthography? Orthography represents a language graphically, not necessarily a phoneme inventory or a phonetic inventory. And orthography can be this entirely separate entity, a living, breathing thing. It's not really, it's not entirely separate usually, but it's kind of like a mirror. And I like this analogy. I use this analogy a lot. Orthography is to languages, languages to thought. Our languages, our natural languages, they don't represent our thoughts perfectly. Who would claim that? There's just nothing that we can do to get that. But it gets at the idea of what we're trying to do. That's kind of really what orthography does with language, especially if you add in the elements of, intonation and all that, and stress and all that garbage that I usually don't bother with because it's so bothersome. Anyway, that's not true. I do bother with it. It's just simplistic. All right. So always remember this is a nice quote. This comes from, I forget what his first name is. I think it starts with a D, but his last name is Coolness, and he did the Oxford series on writing systems. And he wrote this: no writing system is pure in the sense that its units are interpreted as linguistic units of one type only, either words or syllables or phonemes. And if you look at any natural language system holistically, you'll find that that's true, and that's what we have with that leet speak example there. So this is just something that one ought to keep in mind when designing a natural language orthography. All right, so back to our schedule. That's it. Oh, now we're on item 2. All right, let's see. Okay, what to do first? Okay, this is what you do when you're creating orthography. First, create a language or have one in mind. This is actually pretty crucial, though not entirely, if you just like creating orthographies. The idea is if you're as opposed to creating scripts, if you're creating an orthography, you got to have an idea of what the language is in mind, just about how those two things are going to match up. All right. Second, decide on a basic alphabet type or script type, if you have those types there. Third is decide on a writing implement, and the fourth item is obtain said implement. This is really, really important, one might wonder why. Well, it's because written scripts were created with computers. They weren't created with typewriters. We still have anybody using those. I love typewriters. The writing utensil and the medium, it kind of shapes the system's creation, it shapes its evolution, it shapes how it's used, it shapes how it changes over time. So for example, we have this. And this is one of my favorite examples. I actually did this with my English students. So we have these terms. If you're not familiar with these, we have that misspelling of the. It's now taken on a status of its own. Or I don't even know what it means. It's just used in front of things like, it's used in front of adjectives especially. So like you could say somebody, and it has pronunciation too, you could say somebody is stupid. And that means like they're really stupid, they're exceptionally stupid. Here's another one, phone. It has a pronunciation of its own too. If anybody watches Strong Bad, there was an early episode, I think, Teen Girl Squad, where he put that up there, and it didn't really have a pronunciation there, so he put it up there and said pawn or pone or however you pronounce that. Well, it now has a pronunciation, it's pone. And where this comes from, it was own, and it was used in online gaming. To say that you own somebody means that you really just did a number over on them, you found them into the dirt. But of course, if you're typing, you can't see a keyboard, but if you're up here like this and your hands are on home keys, up here is O, up here is P, and they're right next to each other. And gosh darn it, these things are just terrible. You tell them to do things that, I mean, honestly, just think about it. How many of you, just think about it right now, how many people of you have ever misspelled the like that are not dyslexic when writing by hand?
Writing by hand?
Yes, when writing by hand. Now how many people have done it typing? Yeah, there you go. We're not stupid. We know how the is spelled. It has to do with the fact that we're using our hands and they're just clumsy instruments. So, things like this happen. So lots of times when people were trying to type own, their pinky just hit the P, and then somebody said, hey, that's cute. And so there you go. And let's see. Oh, I have another example here. It comes up. Oh, yeah. Oh, then there's this one. So another one, hitting the shift key and hitting 1 at the same time to produce an exclamation point is a rather complex maneuver. And so if you're trying to do it a lot, you might accidentally miss the shift key and just hit 1. And that produces series of exclamation points followed by ones. And then people thought that was cute, and so they started spelling it out. So,
I love to see you spell out 11.
Yeah.
oh yeah. Oh, that's
And
even better.
11T, 11T1.
Wow, that's a lot of
It stands for this mistake.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're supposed to get the exclamation point, you accidentally hit one, and then they said, well, why not just spell out one? So, here's the point. These examples could never have come to exist without a QWERTY keyboard and with the way that we have our keyboard system. Who would have just predicted this, you know, when English was just a written language? What relationship does P have to O, that it would just go there? It doesn't. But if you know the QWERTY keyboard and how typing works, these things kind of naturally evolve. And that's because we're now using this keyboard as our instrument to type. And notice that things like, you know, characters becoming more rounded and more simplified, that's not going to happen when typing. That's not an issue. All the keys look the same and are depressed the same. So anyway, but like, I remember, I have this example, and how you like that one. So this is a cuneiform or something, or Akkadian. And I don't know how many of you thought this the first time you saw it, but I thought, what's going on? Sorry, all right, okay, cuneiform. Help me out here. This happened when I was teaching, and my student, it would drive them nuts. They learned not to talk in class. Anyway, okay, cuneiform. How many people the first time they saw this wondered, who on earth would tolerate a writing system like this and try to draw it out with their pencil or their pen as you draw these things? And it's like, who would do that? Who would write that? But then, of course, when you learn that cuneiform was printed on whetstone tablets, and the end of this reed was shaped like one of those items, and they just punched them, it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. So they didn't sit there drawing these strange triangles. No, they were just punching. And in fact, if you think about a whetstone tablet, I don't know if you've dealt with that, try an ordinary writing system. Clay, wet clay tablet. Try an ordinary writing system in that. It's not as easy as doing that. So anyway, this is something to keep in mind. All right, one quick thing I want to clear up. Natural equals simple, right? No, okay. So there's this idea that natural writing systems erode over time and become naturally more simplified. So that often if somebody comes up with a script and it's very ornate, they'll say, oh yeah, I'll write that for a little while, it'll become simplified. No, that's not necessarily the case. Have you ever seen Vietnamese? I mean, good God, it's the Roman alphabet. Have you seen all those tiny critics and stuff that make you mad? I have a poorly printed dictionary of Vietnamese. I can't read a single word in there. It's just, it's a mess. Everything just looks like a blip. And Chinese, of course, we are all familiar with Chinese. Chinese did simplify over time, but if you look at it right now and compare it to, say, writing English, no, that's not easier. It's not equally easy. It's very difficult. And Egyptian hieroglyphic, God, they did that on stone. Can you imagine? What an awful job. I mean, you'd be saying the sentence, you know, just thousands of times in your mind as you're pounding it out, and Lord help you if you made a typo. Scripts are often simplified over time, but that makes them simpler. It doesn't make them simple. So don't let that be a concern. All right, now I wanted to talk about specific concerns for specific types of systems. So alphabetic concerns. Some writing systems are progressive, like Spanish, and some are frozen, like English. So that you get this phenomenon. And that was just, there's probably more. But yeah, you have that graphing Y, it can stand for all of those things, probably more. It's just a mess. Nobody can learn it. It should be torched. And even Spanish, which is a very progressive system that changes their spelling system to match pronunciation, they still have things like things. If you have the phonetic symbol un, it can be spelled in one of four ways. You know, like that, with an H in front of it, and then both of them with accent marks. So even that's not perfect. So what is the best alphabet, or the perfect alphabet? Well, it's really hard to say. There's this idea. One phonetic feature equals one element. That's totally unnatural. No natural language does that. This is if you're thinking about a natural language. Best alphabet B, one phonetic sound equals one letter. That's still unnatural. Even one phoneme equals one letter. It's getting better, but it's not there. What to do? This is one idea, and I really like this. Develop a history. Even if you don't want a history for your language, just develop an internal phonological history, just for show. If you want a more conservative system, just Create like an older form of the language, create the spelling system then, and then just age it and don't age the system. That's a lot of fun. If it's more innovative, you can decide on changes as you go, but if you have that depth in there, you can kind of isolate some things and then progress others. Here's another great idea. I love this. Borrow an alphabet, just like English did. We borrowed Latin, or the Roman script, and we had to add stuff, and all other languages that borrow the Roman script have to add stuff, delete stuff, change the meanings of things. So here's an idea. Create a system A for language B, and then use it for C. I like it. Anyway, I've tried that. It's fun. All right, so okay, now for objects. All right. Every natural language in the world allows words to begin with a vowel. There was a theory about one language, but that turned out not to be true, as often happens. All right, so Arabic's solution was this. Okay, let's say every V initial word, with a couple of narrow exceptions, begins with a glottal stop. And this is how they do it. So if a word begins with an A, it looks like this. And this is a consonant, and this is a vowel, and you actually can't leave that consonant out. It's important. This one's I, or E, and then this one's U. And then they all said, ta-da! Look at that. See? Every word begins with a consonant. All right.
Do the glottal stop.
Yeah, you don't even hear it in actually nonsense. Well, sometimes. Word initially.
Anyway.
Yeah, sentence initially. Just like English, actually.
English words already start with glottal stop.
Yeah.
I do say an apple. I don't say an apple. And I refuse. Okay. A pure object, a perfectly pure object, has no vowel characters whatsoever, and this simply just doesn't match up with the natural world. All objects have a way today of disambiguating, of writing those vowels in. Usually there's some sort of secondary system like I showed you with Arabic, but the consonants should still kind of be the main event. An idea for adapting objects. I just skipped that. Whatever. All right. Objects have been adapted to languages that don't suit them, like Farsi. Farsi is an Indo-European language that's written like Arabic. So what they do a lot, and in fact even Arabic did this for adapting its long vowels, it will take like semi-vowel characters like ya and wa, and it will turn those into long vowels, usually doubling as their intended consonant versions. Or they'll just take characters with foreign sounds. Even English, or even like Greek did this when it borrowed, whatchamacallit, the Hebrew script? Yeah. What is it? Phoenician. Thank you. All right. They just take, like this letter is for this sound, which we don't have in our language. Okay, well, let's say it's this unrelated sound that we do have. That isn't it? Hey, why not? They do that all the time. So that's something that can be done. All right. Alpha syllabaries, I have, anyway. All right, most are highly specialized and tailor-made for their languages. If you think about something like Hindi, it really, it can be adapted, but most natural syllabaries are not featural, pure syllabaries. So here's an example we have here. These are all Japanese characters that end in U. And that you notice that this is phonemic, so that tu is actually tsu, and u is fu, or whatever. All right, so just take a look at these guys. Okay, first question. Well, I don't know. That kind of looks similar. Is that maybe the U? Or is it this little circle in the middle? Maybe that's an U. There's a cross up there. And so what does U equal? And then like what the heck is going on here? I mean, this one just looks like an elbow, honestly. And then this one looks like a backwards elbow that's rounded. It's just a mess. So usually there are patterns that you can pick up, but it's usually not just hard, set in stone. So something to keep in mind for adapting syllabaries. Oh, few languages are actually CV maximally. Even Hawaiian has long vowels, and they want to claim that means they have different vowels. All right, syllabaries may need to handle the following. Codas. So Japanese, for example, has one coda currently, though in the future they probably won't. It's just an N, and so they have this special character. It's like, that's our coda, and it's Smuraic, and whatever. Long vowels. So here's Tamil. They do funny stuff with curls to indicate the long vowel. So this is a short vowel. I don't even know what character this is. This is the long vowel and the curl. Ditto there. And let's see. Oh, and clusters. Hindi is just a monster to learn. Oh, I can't even believe it, because they have, it seems like 1,000 of these characters where it says, if you have this character, which notice has no vowel sign, and it follows this one, then we have this special forward. This one, at least you can kind of see it. I mean, that's a line, Others, you know, it just makes no sense at all. And it's just nonsense, but I love it. It's great to look at, but it's not great to learn and write. At least if you're an English speaker. I bet they have no trouble with it at all, the people that speak the language natively. All right, logographs. So a natural logographic system, it is not the case that a picture equals a word. You can have a bunch of things. So what can pictures be? Pictures can look like things. So that's an elephant from Egyptian, and that is field in kanji. And if you've ever seen rice fields, you know, that's how they do it. They can look like nothing at all. That is gate. This is west for Japanese. I don't know, it kind of looks like a gate. And this is Nietzsche. That means God in Egyptian. And it looks like a freaking flag to me.
I think it's an axe.
It's an axe?
Yeah.
No, it's a
Yeah, it's an
flag.
axe. Yeah.
And the gods carry axes or something?
They have ways of taxing you.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense.
God axes, you answer.
Well done. All right, and then, there can also be combinations of things. So this is ghost in Japanese. I don't know what each of these elements means, but you see this little guy here? That's something, and then there's this, that part. I actually don't know Japanese, and that's the Egyptian word for purification, ambu. It starts with...
It's a sunlamp.
what?
It's
No,
a base pouring water
Yeah.
over whatever the long skinny thing is, which I can't remember.
It's a
Yeah.
cow's horn.
It's a horn.
Yeah.
There's,
See?
looks like an implemental.
Yeah.
Spring hockey.
Right, no. You should see the Egyptian glyph for penis. It looks just like that.
I like sperm ball.
All right, so for logographic systems, this is a typical evolution. Stage one, you have pictures for very concrete nouns, usually not for all the words, just like, you know, that looks like the sun, let's draw that. Stage two, the combinations, there are metaphorical extensions for abstract concepts as they try to extend this pictorial system to the entire language to represent it. Stage three, the glyphs are reanalyzed. Parts of them start to stand for sounds or sound sequences, and so you often have an overlay of pictures and kind of like a phoneme alphabet. At stage four, there are no more new glyphs, and new words and concepts are all combinations of the old glyphs. And stage five, a permanent move away from the logographic system, and that makes me upset. So, because I really like it so much. All right, so adapting logo freeze. All right, unless stems are limited, so unless you're creating some sort of a language that has, you know, a fixed set of stems, like my language, Kevanala or Tokopona, you can't create a glyph for every word. It's just impossible. Languages have thousands of words. You just can't do that. You're a sane person. And then here's another question. How do you handle borrowings? Most actually have a spelling alphabet that they use just for borrowings. I have no idea actually what Chinese does for foreign
They do.
Coca-Cola, for example, Coca-Cola.
Oh, there you go. Oh, that's nice.
I think they just randomly use some
Yeah,
characters
so it's
that
hard to-
sound vaguely close and mean
Yeah.
something
Nice.
acceptable.
And so you get something like that. The glyphs can always be reanalyzed. So let's say it just stood for this word. Now let's say it stands for actually that sound sequence, or maybe just the first letter of that word. It happens all the time. All right, so what about style? I have this idea. A good orthography does not necessarily equal pretty glyphs. And I have this example here. Let's see if anybody can figure out what I'm saying here. This is English, by the way. I don't think anybody's going to get this.
What, like,
No, I don't think so.
it's
This
interesting.
is like their game show.
I don't know. Okay. Okay. Well, just to save us time here, this is what it says: "Will mend fences for fish." That was the first thing I thought of, or the only thing I could spell out of the pictures I got. And if you take the first letter or the first sound of the title of these pictures, that gets you. All right. Thank you. So that's an orthography for English, but it's not a very good one, and it's just, I mean, sure, these are some of the most famous pictures in the world, except for this one, because I couldn't find one that started with Z, so I just pulled up anything. It's Zeus, but it doesn't really strike one as a great orthography, and you know, you can imagine, if you imagine trying to draw this or type this, that would be hilarious. You have to draw the Mona Lisa every time you want it in.
Use the chisel instead.
You're probably pretty damn good at it. All right.
I wouldn't write.
So it says notes have been in here, and I don't know why. We'll find out in a second. All right. Oh, glyph. The glyph art is less important than the system. If the system is interesting, the orthography will look good. This is what I found, and I found that just on my own by designing. Oh, wow. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's gonna be awesome. All right, cool. All right, so design concerns. There's a problem with some featurable scripts that all characters look alike. And one of the reasons I brought one of the posters I did, which is in Jama's Babel text, if you go look at it, I created all the vowels. They started with an O glyph. And like one is an O, one's an O with a slash, one's an O with a little thing over it, and things like that. So if you look at it, it just looks like nothing but O's. So, you know, that can be a problem. Though I like the rest of it. I actually like the whole thing. It looks pretty cool. Anyway, oh yeah, natural languages have ways of differentiating things in very specific ways. So here's another fancy effect. Can anybody read this? It's English. It's a nonsense sentence. Can anybody read it?
Shows the top instead. Pretty much.
Well, somebody did get fish. I don't know why I'm hung up on fish. Now can you read it? Tilted fish burn the criterion. Come on. All right. So here's the thing, though. English has descenders and ascenders, but we have this basic box right here. If you divide this box in half, the top half gives you much more information than the bottom half. That's the part that we use really more than anything else to kind of get to read, really, and to read quickly. This is kind of something to keep in mind for when you're designing a script if you want it to be highly legible. Because if you create everything where it's like every character is a box with certain things in the box, it's just going to become a nightmare. Anyway, so just an observation. All right, so for anybody who was at LCC2 or saw the talks,
Do you know if that's true for Chinese?
I don't. No, actually, you know, every system has to be analyzed separately.
Yeah.
So, you know, and actually Chinese, that changes the whole thing because each one is basically a word. That just changes the whole way you have to look at it, I think.
I don't think it could be true.
Yeah. Anyway.
Chinese subtitles are way faster and more complete than English subtitles.
Oh, yeah.
Chinese reading speed is generally faster, although.
All right, so if you were at LCC2, sorry, CLI's giving me this look like, don't listen to me. All right. If you were at LCC2 or if you saw John Quijada's talk, he's talking about this thing called Sprachgefühl. And so I used that and devised my own Germanic word, Schreibgefühl, which is basically the glyphs in a script, they look and kind of feel like they belong together. You look at them and you kind of know. And the question is how. And here are a few things that I identified. One is what I call line style and line width. It's hard to illustrate this if you're not creating a font. But like, for example, I'm sorry I can't hear you, but you have this here. This is all the same font, of course. But notice how it's, all the lines are the same. So here, this is from that font. See, thick all around. This one, it's a little stylized. It gets thin in places. It gets fat in places. And then this one kind of like has different serifs and things like that. Now, when I say this is bad, whatever. Take it with a grain of salt. But the idea is that it starts to look a little jumbled, and it makes it look like you're looking at a created writing system, and it's like, that glyph looks like it came from a totally different writing system, and that's just a kind of a bizarre thing. And I know this because I've noticed that in some of my own scripts. I try not to do it anymore, but I know better how to do it. Also, sizing. This is another thing I noticed. It's very important to get the size of things down. So you remember English has this box here, and then it has its descenders and ascenders and its caps height. Well, here, all these are supposed to be lowercase, so it's like I have this box, this box, this box. And this is just something that I've noticed in just a few scripts where it's like I'll have one character that's teeny tiny, and then a whole bunch of characters that seem like they fit in some sort of box, and then another character where it's like they're great big, and they come next to each other. And it probably is actually much easier to read, now that I think about it. They're also different. But anyway, so yeah.
I think that can stick.
Oh.
You have to
Well, it's not a mistake so much. It's just a thing. It's a thing. I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, and this is another one. Familiar pieces. The glyphs are built out of familiar pieces. So in English, we got, our stick, our line, our circles, our line width, all that stuff. And if we have something coming up this little tooth here, all these little teeth look the same. All the little endings look the same. Whereas if you get here, these are just different fonts. You have these wildly divergent pieces, and suddenly they start to look unfamiliar. And it helps. It helps if all the little endings, the little terminuses, all kind of end the same way. They're all flat. They're all slanted. Whatever. So anyway, something I noticed. Looks like, oh yeah, and here's an example. These are circle characters from, I don't know, what is that, 8 different languages. And they're all basically circle characters. There's English, that one's, I think, not Ethiopian, but the one it was based on, Armenian. Arabic, Hindi, Georgian, don't know, something, I don't know. So they're all just supposed to be circles. But they all kind of fit into their system. Even look at the Georgian compared to the Hindi. I mean, they're basically the same thing. But this one, it's a perfect circle. This one, there's a little bit kind of like that fat thing right there. And, you can just tell that they kind of come from, a different thing. Anyway. All right. Most important, orthography design doesn't necessarily mean glyph design, though that is by far the most fun part. It's also the system, and the system in some ways is kind of more important than the glyphs in a very whatever kind of way. So, and also just remember to let your writing implement speak to you, and that's mine speaking to me. It says that I'm fun. Anyway, so all right, schedule. Okay, this is going to be short, and this is why. First, font creation is not easy, and it's not for everyone. It's a very painstaking, time-consuming process, and it makes you want to kill yourself when you realize that you didn't save what you had just done, which is what happened with the font I created for this presentation. Anyway, yeah, not only that, it's expensive. So you look at some of the things out there. There are some open source stuff that's free, that's great, and it has some function, it doesn't have some functions, but then it just gets ridiculous. So Font Lab Studio, for example, $649, and Lord help you if they have an update, because they'll make you pay again. I got a cheap one. It's from these same guys, Type Tool, $99. It was a great investment for how much enjoyment and work I've gotten out of it, and for what it does. But anyway, so, and also all the font programs differ. So this is just some basic advice that is generally useful, I hope. Some background. First of all, TTF, True Correct Font. That's the now fairly universal font that hopefully we're going to move to OTF and other things. Italics and bold are actually separate associated fonts. They're not processes. They can be processes, but then the result is ugly. If you just tell it increase character width by this much, it's better if they're actually separately designed fonts. And it's important to know whether your program supports Unicode, especially for us conlangers. If not, if you're stuck to the ASCII, the traditional ASCII and then the shift set, oh my goodness. Forget it if you're trying to create some sort of syllabary. All right, fonts in the West. So fonts are created using what I think of as a Western framework, which is all fonts assume a basic alphabetic script. They all do. Their glyphs are isolatable. You go, here's your font, and this you type it, and it goes right next to each other. And it's no secret why this is. We have English, and then that was where the printing press came about, and then we created typewriters using that, and then we created word processing based on typewriters.
Surely it should be German or Latin to tape setting.
Oh yeah.
German was the...
I started ours,
but they weren't printing German, they were printing Latin.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course, Latin is just the alphabet, so that's the point. That I should put English up there because I hate it. No, but I love English. I'm kidding. What can I say? I don't speak anything else. All right, no, that's not true either. All right, so here's the thing. Is it just alphabets that you can work with then? No, of course not. The trick is hammering nonlinear elements into a linear framework, and it can be done. So, for example, I have this. This is a toy orthography. This is what happens if you type David. Capital D, then lowercase a, b, I, d. You get this. And this is how it works. D, A, B, I, D. Just like that. So as you can see, you can just position elements all over the place. I don't know, I guess it's kind of representative to me. It's Arabic, that's her name, Davey, that's a little wave, that's me as a surfer, and as you can see, I'm now getting older, so I have a little belly. And there's the son I'm so fond of, that I haven't seen much of this weekend. But anyway, so how? All right, so here are your new friends. We're going to try to do this. I'm just going to, come on, keep going. I'm just going to click all these, and I'm going to see, and then it's center to center. I'm going to try my best to do this.
So if you're going to do that, I'll give you a poll, we'll hang it.
Dad, can you hit the lights, please?
Oh, sweet.
Suboptimal, but it'll say.
Okay.
Put it where the podcast.
Oh, that actually works.
Put it where the simulcast can see it.
Don't worry about the simulcast thing.
Yeah. You can-
Okay. All right.
You may want to keep a hand on the top.
We'll see what happens. Okay, so let's say that this is your font window. All right, oh wow, that is really tiny. All right, so let's say this is your font window. You have these lines at your disposal. So this is the baseline. The baseline is the only one that doesn't move. Then you have these other lines. The left margin, I'm writing this in yellow for purpose.
Don't use yellow.
I was doing it in yellow for purpose, but all right, I'll use red. All right, there's your left margin. There's your right margin, and then you have these other guys, the descender and ascender. You also have caps height, but we're going to ignore that. All right, so here's the neat thing. The baseline is the only thing that's immobile. Everything else here is movable. All right, great. Wow, really? Oh, dude, I have tons of time. Oh, okay. All right, so everything else here is movable. So what that means is, let's say, for example, you have, I don't know, just, bam. All right, you have this. But this is what happens on your word processing document. Let's say that the little, blinking cursor is right here, and it's blinking. All right, so if this is your character, when you type it, this is stage one. Stage two is this. And then this is a reference point. And then the little blinking cursor goes there. Okay, so that's what happens. And we're all pretty familiar with this. Now, the question, the radical question, what happens if you take this line and match it up with this line? Oh, all right, so, all right, now, these two lines are the same line. They're identical. Now what happens? Okay, let's see. Okay, so here we are 1 and 2 again. There's the dot, and let's just pretend the cursor is right here. Now this is stage 2. And cursor. So what happens is that effectively the cursor didn't advance any. And it placed this character over there can advance to however much it was told, which was 0. So what this means is that you have absolute control over where everything goes just by use of this. In fact, if you switch these, then things get even crazier. So for example, if all your characters, and this is what I did for Kamakawi, I decided on a font box, and that was my box. And I didn't vary that box. All the characters have the same box. It was like, I don't know, something like 1,200 height and 600. Maybe let's just say it was 1,000 each way. All right. So then what happens is when I created characters that I wanted to appear above or below the other ones, I just moved this over here and I measured it out because I knew that the font box was the same. And so I knew where exactly that character was going to appear above or below the other ones. And you can just do that. Now if you have glyphs that are varying widths and heights and sizes like that, it can get a little bit more difficult, but you just have to create more characters and always keep the math in mind. That was one of the things that really galled me. I hate math, and then I realized when I was doing this, oh my God, I have to know numbers, and I have to remember this. But anyway, so like for this little toy example that I had there, the only, I want to switch pages, but I'm not, so just bear with me here. The only glyph that was actually had a left and right margin like this was this one, and I just did, what was it, like that? So I just did that like that. All the rest of them appeared to the left, and I just measured. And the nice thing about this empty color, so let's say that this is in brown and that the empty color is red. I just copied and pasted this blip into the next window, so I knew exactly where it ended, so that I could do something like, what was it even? Something like that, yeah. So I matched it up like that, and then I just deleted this one, and then turned this to black. And then I just kept going like that, so that I always knew where everything was in reference to everything else, and so I didn't even have to measure. I knew exactly where it was, and I knew that when I printed it out, it was going to match up perfectly. So those are kind of some tricks that you can do as you're creating fonts, and you want them to do really crazy things, like you want them to write top to bottom, right to left. And by the way, we're getting a lot of better right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top support, both on the web and with fonts. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, go ahead and lights again, and just in case people can't see. All right.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
So in the course of that, though, then you define your V to be whatever it is when you type it, but it will always appear in that position. It wouldn't be context sensitive.
No, it won't. So you have to keep that in mind.
Okay.
But then if you want to get, and this is all just the basic low-tech stuff. If you want to get into stuff that's really complex, we have pretty much. Oh, I'm sorry. He was asking that in that font if V will always be the same, A will always be the same. The answer is yes, it will. So now you can go back and listen to what I just responded, and it will make sense. All right, so this is low tech. All of this can be done without a lot of knowledge of font making, honestly. With a little more, all this gets easier and more precise. Okay, all right. And there are a lot of other technical issues, and what I wanted to mention for fonts specifically, there's a lot of technical stuff and a lot of really specific stuff. If anybody has any font questions or anything like that, I would love to discuss them sometime else, sometime this weekend. But yeah, unfortunately, time is what it is. So there we have that. All right. I was so horrified that that wasn't caught as a misspelling. Apparently, that's a word. Oh God. All right. So. There's a misconception, I think, that good scripts come from good artists. Now, they can. I happen to think like Trent Peterson is a fantastic artist, and he also has good scripts. But that's not necessarily the case. So conlangers are experts at creating systems. That's what we do. You know, we systematize, and that's all that languages are, really fancy systems. And so a good orthography is nothing more than a good system. So really, why can't conlangers all conlangers should be just great at making orthographies if they just have the tools available to them. So practice makes perfect, so practice. And honestly, it's more fun than figuring out relative and supported clauses and all that syntactic garbage. And there are some references, including this talk. And all right, any questions? Thank you very much.
Diana, can we get lights, please?
I saw the first question on my right. That was Jeff Burke.
Let's say it.
What do you need? Sure.
Yeah, your the descriptions of the writing systems brought something up I wanted to ask you specifically about logographic systems, because I designed a logographic system that I'm going to describe here in a second. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this, because I tried to make it, alien, not in extraterrestrial sense, but just as in, something that hadn't been done before. The logographs were morphemic. They represented, the elements of a word, and you would take these elements, and to write a sentence, you would work them into a meaningful picture.
Oh, so it changes?
Yeah, you would work them into some kind of meaningful picture, such that it did, without getting into describing the specifics. You ever seen anything like that?
First of all, one thing to note, one thing that I'm always very happy to note, is that no natural It died. You still hear me? All right. No natural writing system is actually sensitive to morphemes. So you can take that for what it's worth. Maybe morphemes aren't really that way. But what?
Sensitive in what way?
In that they recognize them specifically as a category. So no natural language orthography recognizes the morpheme unit as a category that it represents in whatever it's doing.
At the time I created the system, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well,
Now.
hey, that's what common lines are for. Anyway, so the other question was lips that are arranged, differently to kind of create a picture.
Yeah.
Never for just a natural language, but like for ornamental languages. So I'm thinking of Mayan. Do others in the audience have ideas?
Well, I mean, simplified Chinese uses a standard set of strokes to make each logograph. So, I mean, is that similar? I mean,
But then they're set.
and you're subtracting from the traditional, which was almost a picture of what it was supposed to stand for.
I don't think that's quite what you mean, but
But by the same token, I have a different question, but just by the same token, no natural language pays attention, no natural orthography pays attention to phonemes.
that's true. They try. They try.
No, but they might try with morphemes as well.
But do you mean phones or phonemes?
That's a unit.
I mean phonemes.
Because most natural languages are.
I mean the logical constituencies, what we Sorry?
No, Spanish.
No, but
Anyway.
they do it badly. They all do it badly. Which is all you're saying,
Okay.
So Chinese, you could argue that it pays attention to phonemes, it just doesn't badly. The same way that all orthographies do the phonemes badly.
Yeah.
Natural.
Pays attention to morphemes.
Yeah.
Okay, but darn, that wasn't your specific idea. I have a feeling that there's ornamental scripts that have tried to do that. So, for example, like, have you ever seen Erode calligraphy? There's just some fantastic stuff. I saw one that was a little dove or a pigeon. Oh, it's just great. That's kind of similar.
To the form of like a boat with all the
Yeah.
rowers and everything. It was really
Okay, a bunch of hands went up. I don't know how much was related to what we were just talking about or how many are new questions.
Well, I was just going to throw in the Balinese has an official ornamental orthography. It was used only in the court, and it includes some really super fancy letters that mean in praise of God or the king is great. And it basically was never used as a normal writing system. So there's a few, but Mayan is syllabic, actually.
Right.
They just make pictures out of the little pieces of the syllables, so you look at the head and then you have to parse out the three things in the head that actually make matter.
I think that's actually kind of what Jeff is doing, just with morphemes, isn't it?
Yeah, I knew the Mayan system was syllabic, I just didn't know if anyone had done it with morpheme at all. Because it works particularly well with this particular language.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayan's great.
I saw two back there, and then Kelly, and then Sally, and then Jim.
We may not have done.
Okay. We'll give it a shot.
What? Sorry. Well, I was just going to want to bring up, by the way, great talk, fantastic, really enjoyed it. The tub and the poon. Is it poon or poon? Poon.
Oh, right, yeah.
I thought that was interesting because you were bringing it up. They don't refer to anything. So it's true that they're generated out of the media. So the media, they're an aspect of orthography that is generated by a new, in quotation marks, media.
Right.
But there's no, they create a new word by doing it. So there was nothing announced before. There was no utterance before they were made.
No, absolutely.
So it slightly brings up, I was a little bit concerned generally that the talk was about orthography as if it's subordinate to some other thing, rather than just being language per se.
I hope I didn't make that language.
Well, no, because it was a little bit emphasized that you develop your language and then you develop your orthography.
Oh.
Whereas even here, I think there's people who are developing things where
no.
orthography is the language.
Let me clarify what I meant there. I meant if you want to develop if you're developing some sort of a natural language orthography that wants to emulate a natural language's orthography, And usually, even though this is kind of unwritten and unspoken, most conlangers, when they create a language, they're aiming at around, I don't know, the Bronze or Stone Age. That's where we seem to start. It's just kind of the default. I don't know why this happens. So typesetting hasn't even come about yet, though sometimes we pretend it is with our orthographies. Now, when you get to the stage where we're at, like with English, suddenly just the variables just increase tenfold, and you have to bring in all these other considerations. So I wasn't saying that, let's say, but for at least the very beginning, I was saying that. Okay.
Well, but kind of on that point, it's certainly possible that as your orthography develops, it can in turn influence the language. So once you have a way to spell things, you can say, oh, well, we keep writing text, and I'm like, well, let's make that mean something. Or, it turns out that these two characters are hard to tell apart. Well, let's just start pronouncing them the same. That sort of thing. So it can be a two-way street, even.
Oh, it can. That's something linguists know through my experience.
Say again?
Or I said it certainly can, and that's something that linguists are loath to admit in my experience.
Okay.
But the question was about how orthography and language are kind of a two-way street, where the language influences the orthography, and the orthography can then in turn influence the language. Okay.
I'm going to cut in with two questions.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Did they come before Sally?
Yes, because they were before Sally.
Okay, sure.
I think this is probably only going into the system or something, not to the speakers, but too bad. I'll just speak loudly. Hi, this is Don Boozer. Nice work, David, and sorry I couldn't be there. Is there any way you could post a tutorial on your web thing for what you covered on the flip chart?
In my copious spare time? No, yeah, actually that would be a good and in fact a better idea. I will consider it. Thank you for the idea.
And second from Jan again. David, what is your opinion on the relationship between a conlang and a conscript? A conscript can be used for a natural language. An existing script can be used for conlang.
Right.
But suppose someone builds a pictographic language that uses its own grammar, but can still be used for expressing a natlang. How would you classify such a thing?
Well, I guess if you had to classify it, I mean, like what name would I give it? I don't know. It's kind of a bizarre question. Is it needed? But that would be something like Bullous symbolics, wouldn't it? Would it not? Oh gosh, I'm talking to somebody that's on IRC.
Yes.
Is he responding?
They're on a delay.
No, sorry. Okay, well, I think that's something like Bliss Symbolics, which somebody, Arika Orant, it's in her book, isn't it? Which is called?
In the Land of Invented Languages.
In the Land of Invented Languages. Look for that to come out in May. She has a whole section on Bliss
You
Symbolics.
brought it, right?
Yeah, I did.
So it'll be here. And
Yeah.
we're auctioning copies.
Oh, really?
But I'll talk about it.
Okay, anyway. But yeah, that's kind of like that. He created this pictographic system that was supposed to represent, well, it could represent its own grammar, but it could also be used for English and French and pretty much anything, or at least that was the idea. So they exist, and I think they're neat. If I had to give them a name, I would just call them, I don't know, a conscript. But actually, that's a very nice example of how, a script doesn't necessarily need to be tied down to any language. It can have, a life of its own. It's pretty neat. All right.
It seems obvious to me, after you demonstrated what you can do and the difficulties of it, that you could probably do conjoined letters or conjoined phonemes,
Yes.
for which Tanoff has a million.
Yeah.
And it sort of like the types that we used from the 15th century on, where you had the tall S and the T underneath it.
Right.
There's all sorts of F, sounds and
Ligatures.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's essentially, so we were going over basic font making, that's advanced.
So basically,
But yes,
it would
And
be
that's where you need the
$60.
$700 version of the program.
Yes.
You can do really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really, and it's hard to do, and you have to pay for it. at that
Because
point.
I do have one that is much easier. The one that I write with has all of these conjoined characters, but I do have one that can be done in a simpler system, but it just doesn't look as good.
Yeah, and the idea, the goal there would be for you to type out those letter sequences and for them to, after you've typed them, automatically, just like that.
I would like some to have broader fonts and narrower ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now we're getting specific. We're talking about your project,
Okay.
which I do want to help you with. Okay. Any more questions? Wait, one more? Yes. Oh, Jim, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There's a very, very nasty aspect to fonts,
Oh, yeah.
which is intellectual property law. Fonts are intellectual property. And one of the things that is happening out there in the world at large is that intellectual property law is invading everything. So, for instance, for genetically modified seeds, now farmers, after thousands of years of just being able to plant seeds, no, you can't do that, that's illegal. So talk about intellectual property law with respect to the more general things. I mean, do we have to worry that an orthography could become copyrighted or intellectual property, or?
Well,
I mean, we've already seen a situation where Microsoft, they didn't get away with it, but they made a play to own the words. I don't know if people realize this. Microsoft literally made a play to own the words of the language.
why doesn't this surprise me?
And they didn't succeed, but in a way it's still there. I mean, there are places in Microsoft Word where if you do not turn off smart tags, some of Microsoft's goo is actually there in the Word.
Ooh. Okay, well, let me just make a quick comment about that. At least with my font making program, I have a minute to say this. What you can do is, first of all, you can identify yourself as the creator, and that's actually embedded in the font. So anytime, if it happens to get out on the internet and it's downloaded, even if somebody starts using it in a way that you wouldn't like them to, let's say, you're still on there as the creator. And not only that, but it provides, at least this is just the one I use, so this is very specific, but you can put down your name, your copyright, and you can also put down a list to, or I'm sorry, a link to take you to the, what's the thing, the copyright license, the license URL. So you can also write up your own license for it if you want it to be open source or whatever like that. What's hard to protect against, I don't know which angle you wanted me to come from here, but what's hard to protect against is somebody taking that font, downloading it, and then copying the characters and pasting them into their own font, and then writing up their own license for that.
Or redrawing.
Or redrawing them by hand. And when it gets to that point, it's like, oh, geez.
Well, I guess I was coming from the opposite perspective, which is that most of us think of languages of the world as commons, and alphabets and scripts as commons. Now, fonts are not a commons.
Right.
And do we have to worry about a world in which the alphabet is not